Well, let me first define what a cell is. This image is of cells from a buccal swab. A gentle scraping of the inside of your mouth is taken and then placed on a slide, dried, then stained. Here you can see some isolated cells, each with a small round nucleus. The cell is the basic structural, functional, and reproductive unit of all multicellular organisms. In other words, it's a basic unit of life. Let me just summarize generally what some of our body functions are that help us to live and survive every day of our life. In this short reminder of these body functions, I'll show you some images of the cells that perform these functions, but only to help you focus. You are not yet required to understand each specific cell structure. We have cells in our body that protect us. For instance, the skin is the cellular lining that protects us from the external environment. It waterproofs our body and protects it from excessive ultraviolet light. We have cells that are also involved in ingesting, taking in materials, and those materials, when taken in by the cell, are digested or broken down into meaningful products, where they can then be used to provide nutrients or generate energy that is essential for most of our daily functions and processes. Cells also absorb other metabolites that are critical for other parts of our body function. Once all these components are absorbed by the cell and converted into useful products, they can then be broken down and eliminated as wastes. The cell can get rid of waste products as our body does. We are involved in movement every day of our life. That requires skeletal muscles to help move our body, to walk, to run, to lift and carry things, but also we have cells in our body that affect other types of movement. For instance, movement of blood through our heart, or blood through our blood vessels, such as this small artery, and food products through our alimentary system or our gut, or urine through our urinary system, and so on. We're also involved with communicating. We're the most communicating being on this earth. We use communication every day of our lives. We have cells in our bodies that help us to communicate, to help us see, to help us speak, to help us listen, to help us smile. All those sorts of activities that require communication require cells in our body to become very specialized. And communication also involves our nervous system, most importantly, where cells generate impulses that help us to innervate our skeletal muscles and move. Or we have cells as part of the neuroendocrine system and the endocrine system. They secrete chemical messengers that can target various cells in our body or communicate with those cells and bring about different functions. And of course, we can reproduce. We can reproduce as human beings, but also almost all cells in our body can reproduce and replace cells that die, because most cells in our body have a limited lifespan, so we need to replace them at various intervals. And lastly, our cells are involved with necrosis, the breaking down of cells, and finally, the process of aging and then death. There are two sorts of cells. There are the prokaryotes, which include bacteria, and there are the eukaryotes, which include human cells. I'm only going to refer to the eukaryotes, or cells that are typical of the human species and other animal species as well. The eukaryotes are far more complex than the prokaryotes. They contain chromosomes where the DNA becomes very compact and condensed, ready for cell division. The DNA is housed within a nucleus, and that nucleus is a feature of all eukaryotes.